The issue with grooming gangs in this country is a massive problem. Even the government launched an inquiry and an investigation into this whole issue, and MPs from various parties, Labour and Tories, have been trying to push for this problem to be tackled. Today we have a special guest with us. We have a Rotherham Grooming gang survivor, Dr. Ella Hill. It's actually not her real name, but she's actually a medical doctor. She's received a lot of abuse on Twitter because she's trying to hide her true identity. Some people thought she's not actually real, but we have actually verified her. She's had meetings at Downing Street, number 10, and she's been talking to a number of people in Westminster to start an APPG, an all-party parliamentary group to tackle this issue. So let's go to Dr. Ella Hill and see what she has to say. Welcome to the show, firstly. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Maya. And how are you?
Yeah, not bad, thanks. How's the whole lockdown situation with you? Are you alright, or?
Yeah, we're coping pretty well, thanks. It's okay.
Good, good. So obviously you have a personal kind of story with this whole situation, and so what's your take? What's your kind of give us a bit of a summary and your introduction, basically.
Yeah, sure. Well, I contacted you because I'm a Rotherham Grooming gang survivor. So over 20 years ago, I was groomed into one of these organised gangs and networks that you hear about. I had a boyfriend. He was a Pakistani Muslim. He was over 15 years older than me. I was in my late teens, so he was in his 30s. And yeah, we had a relationship, and then that went on to lead to being taken to different houses to be raped. I was beaten, strangled, suffocated, and raped over 100 times. And when I tried to get away, they carried out an honour attack on me, which left me with fractures and lacerations.
Wow.
So there's quite a lot of medical evidence from that, and pregnancy as a result of that as well. So that's my history, that's my background. When it hit the news in 2014 and it became the big scandal about Rotherham, that's when I reported the police who dealt with my case, and I complained about them to the Independent Police Complaints Commission, and my complaints were upheld, and I received an apology from South Yorkshire Police for gross misconduct, and then I re-reported my rapes again so that it could be re-investigated, and that was investigated by the National Crime Agency and South Yorkshire Police.
Yeah,
but unfortunately they didn't prosecute those perpetrators in my case.
yeah.
But yeah, the reason I'm interested in all this now is because I'm trying to help find a way for the government to address this in a way that deals with the racially and religiously aggravated aspects of the crime, because for those aspects the crime should get longer, the perpetrators should get longer prison sentences under the law, and that's the way that it's been for a long time.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think because this whole problem, I mean, it happens in every country and every culture, but the specific problem we're talking about, especially in this country and Western Europe, is whether we like it or not, it is a lot of times linked to the culture and the religion when it comes to the Middle East in general. And some people are afraid of talking about this because they say that you're just aggravating, and you basically it's based you're a closet racist or whatever. And but it's not really true, is it?
Well, no, it's very unfair to blame the victims for racialising the issue when it's actually the perpetrators who have racialised the issue by targeting mainly white victims, although there's some Sikh and Hindu
Of course, yeah.
Victims as well, and
Yeah,
also some Muslim, and
yeah,
anyone who's
yeah.
accused of being too westernised, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the problem is most people in your situation, a lot of the survivors, tend to keep quiet. And whether because they're shy, or they feel that they're victims, or they're just afraid of obviously speaking out, you are speaking out. You are trying your best to do something about this. And so tell us more about what you want to do, especially when it comes to like the legality of this whole situation with Parliament and with politics.
Well, the way that I see it is that there's a big problem in lots of different fields. So in policing, in education, in healthcare, in really across the board, there's lots of problems, and the main cause of that problem is a failure to accept that it's a racially and religiously aggravated crime, just in the specific subcase of grooming gang crime. The government has produced lots of documentation over the years, and it's been called different things, from on-street grooming to CSE and organised networks to CSE and gangs and networks. But the majority of those cases, we know from research, is over 96% are from Asian backgrounds, which is Pakistani, Afghan and Iraqi.
Yep.
So what I think is important when we do address this particular issue of grooming gang crime, especially when it comes to grooming gang review, and how we then go on to deal with the issue after the grooming gang review results come out, it's really important to acknowledge the anti-Western hate crime element, the racist abuse element, and the Islamist extremism spiritual abuse element as well. So do a comprehensive approach to dealing with the problem, including all those categories.
Yeah, because you're right. There is an element of the far left or the Antifa side who are obsessed with like hate speech laws, but at the same time, ironically, they're using that now against the Westerners and white people.
That's right.
Because you have in terms of what you want to do is, I believe, you don't really want to put every single brown person or someone from Pakistan in the same category, but you just want to point out that it's not necessarily just about them being from there. It's a lot of them who are culturally or based on the extreme side of religion. That's what makes them to do that. So you have this graph. I'm going to show it to everybody here. You've got three kind of circles about the kind of the abuse. If you want to talk about that.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is that grooming gang crime, the definition that I would give is that it's a racially and religiously aggravated rape, and it is a type of intersectional identity-based violence which attacks your racial and religious and sexual identities. So if we take this definition, then I think it's being very clear about what the perpetrator's intentions are, about who they attack and why. And it's protecting innocent Muslims, it's protecting innocent brown people who may get accused of being Uncle Toms or being coconuts if they try and raise this issue, or worse, being accused of being Islamophobic.
Yep.
It's protecting researchers and safeguarding professionals,
yep.
Even police and the courts, because they can be accused of being racist if they bring up this issue and the racial issues around it. And it protects the women's services, the press, the politicians, basically all of our inclusive, fair, just society is protected if we can all deal with it and we can all process it as racially and religiously aggravated rape.
You're right, because you mentioned the religious side of it, and the next graph that you have is it's talk about the faith groups, and there's one side is very helpful and very harmful. So what's this about?
Yeah, well, this chart is what I use to very simply explain that all faith groups are about love. And they're about caring for children and about looking after families and protecting the family unit. But there is a spectrum of religious practices from very helpful to very harmful. So at the very helpful end, you've got giving to the poor, taking care of the sick, helping the needy. And that's a tenet of most major religions. In fact, probably not all of them, if not all of them. And then at the very harmful end, you've got religious extremism, spiritual abuse. You've got a lot of coercive control. There's this elitism and superiority of those particular mindsets that can lead to exploitation, that can lead to sort of a dominance and a demand for obedience and submission.
Okay, that's interesting. And because what you generally want to do from your side, because the next thing that we have from you is technically your agenda, because I think you've asked for an APPG, which is an all-party parliamentary group, to be set up in Parliament, and to kind of change the definitions. What are you actually talking about in this whole thing?
Well, there's so many things that need to be done to improve so many different areas, like I said, in policing and social services and councils, and lots of equality and diversity policies. Absolutely masses that needs to be done to undo the problems that have been created in the past. Mm-hmm. That I really think an APPG, just specifically to represent us as survivors and victims, not to demonise us, not to call us far right, not to try and silence us or shut us up, but to actually listen to us as survivors and to represent our views. I think that would be helpful. Alongside that, or maybe in tandem to that, probably an APPG specifically on anti-Western hate crime, which could lead to an investigation into anti-white racism in Parliament, in certain sections of government. Who knows if that's indicated? But yeah, at least 1 or 2 APPGs, I think, would be a place to start so that we can get some of this work done.
Yeah, I believe you have obviously spoken to a number of people, and I've spoken to my kind of friends that I have in Parliament and around Westminster, and I'm actually kind of planning to get involved with this whole situation with the APPG.
That's great to hear.
And I'm planning to
That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, because I'm planning to help kind of set up, not just specifically just for the grooming gang issue, but also the anti-Western, anti-white sort of mentality, which is, again, ironic because that's kind of hate crime and hate speech.
It definitely is. I mean, anti-white hate speech is definitely hate speech, and it can be prosecuted under the what's it called, the Public Order Act 1986, Section 4. So if a person is guilty of threatening or abusive or insulting words or behaviour that might lead to a person to believe that they're at risk of violence, then that can be prosecuted under the law. And very often it's used to try and quiet people like me down, but it can also be used, and we would be wise to use that law to protect ourselves against the attacks that we are under.
Just to clarify before we finish, none of this and all this conversation we had doesn't necessarily mean that you and I are some sort of like far right or some sort of intolerant people or kind of mean.
Absolutely the opposite. No, I really feel that we have to protect. We have to protect innocent Muslims. We have to protect Islam from ridicule and insult. That's really important, because if we don't do that, we're going to get further racial tensions and further conflict. So we have to. I think that's a joint mission, that we would see that as being really important as we go forward, trying to deal with these issues. But we do still need to protect the white girls, still need to protect victims, because at the moment we're not being protected from hate crime. We're not being protected from racially aggravated assaults.
You're right, because when we talk about we have to protect our culture here, people think it's some sort of trivial thing. It's not necessarily for the sake of the culture, like as some sort of abstract sort of idea. It's actually because of ordinary people's lives that will be affected. And this is one of those things that we could literally talk about for hours and hours. But what I want to do is, for those who don't know, hopefully in about a month or so, when Parliament gets back to normality, we are going to be having more updates on this whole APPG stuff and everything else. So what I want to have is to have you on the show again soon to give people some sort of update. Any last few words?
Sorry?
Do you have any last few words?
Any last few words? Well, only that we've all got an identity, or we've all got a set of identities, and we can all be hated by somebody because of those identities, and that includes white people and it includes Western people, and protecting anybody is not a harmful thing to do.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Take care then. Thank you, Maya. Bye-bye.